The COVAX facility was born out of realization that in this unprecedented pandemic that we face, countries were not going to be able to get to the end of a pandemic and have access to vaccines if they worked alone. And so COVAX is really brought around this collective realization that together the countries are going to be much stronger. We have 189 economies that have signed up to the facility to be able to access COVID-19 vaccines together. The COVAX facility is putting together a very large portfolio of vaccines to make sure that we have the right vaccines and a large volume of vaccines to be rolled out throughout the countries.
Let's look back for a moment at 2019 and 2020 and think about how badly the world was prepared for this pandemic. What do you think we've learned, and how will those lessons help in future outbreaks?
I think we've learned a number of things looking back over the last year or so, starting with the vaccine development. We've learned a lot in terms of what can be accelerated to make sure that we have vaccines as quickly as possible while maintaining a very strong rigor of establishing the safety and efficacy of vaccines. We've also learned, I think, the value of multilateralism and of countries working together, understanding how countries depend on each other to make sure that they can work and get to the end of the pandemic, not just by looking within their borders, but working more widely.
COVID-19 overwhelmed the world. No part of planet Earth escaped. Do you think our institutions are really in the right shape to have dealt with something like this, and do they need an overhaul?
The institutions, I think, have rallied together alongside with the countries. The COVAX facility has 189 economies supported by their institutions. I think also there's been a very strong rallying from the perspective of the donors, sovereign governments and private donors, around really making sure that there can be rapid funding for the work that is being done. Clearly, this is an unprecedented situation. We are all very much learning and doing as we go. But what's really helping is to make sure that we have the collaborations that have been in place previously and are building on them through this collective effort of developing and then ultimately deploying the COVID vaccine globally.
How would you describe the speed at which a number of vaccines have now been developed and tested, and what does that suggest about the future of immunization programs?
The speed of development has been unprecedented. When we think back that at the beginning of the year, there were no vaccines that were in development against COVID-19. We had different technology platforms, and they were immediately applied by a large number of vaccine manufacturers. And the vaccine industry here has really stepped up to be able to answer the call that was needed for a new vaccine. So we've learned, I think, a lot in terms of also being able to do in parallel certain steps that in the past have been done more one after the other, and that helps accelerate development.